this story, and I think we have to. There are those people in the inner cities and African Americans who will say that the police will target young black Americans, and they will look at them specifically as criminals first and not necessarily with any sort of innocence whatsoever. Would you not agree that there is still that permeated opinion that rolls through many African American communities?
Well, look, blacks in black communities can say what they want. But the fact of the matter is there's an exorbitant amount of crime that occurs in those communities. And while we talk about this particular situation, I don't know how many black kids got killed in Chicago and Detroit and Atlanta and various other cities that aren't going to get any press. It's Trayvon Martin all over again. The fact is this: cops have a tough job, and that job is exponentially, certainly geometrically tougher in black communities. Why? Because black communities create crime. There's a reason why when you hear the term black community, you don't think Beverly Hills. You know, you understand what that means. That is part of your GPS avoidance system. You don't drive through there. You don't go there at night. You know when it's time to leave. If you happen to be there, you know when it's time to go in. So the idea that cops are just indiscriminately leaving their donut breaks to go target black citizens is ridiculous. We've created this problem through liberalism, and as CL alluded to, this is decades old, and the problem is nobody wants to talk about your old kid who was minding his own business and he gets run upon by Zimmerman. In this case, they depict this guy as a guy who was minding his own business, and suddenly the cops just showed up out of nowhere, targeted him and shot him. Now, I don't know what the details are, but here's what I will tell you. They won't tell you the real story behind this particular guy until they've milked all they can out of the situation that the cop shot this kid. It may turn out he was dealing drugs, he was suspected for robbery, whatever, I don't know. We've been told he was on his way to college the next day.
Okay, let me just interrupt here because I want to make sure that we get this in here. According to the chief of the St. Louis County Police Department, the officer tried to leave his vehicle just before the shooting, but the young man pushed him back into the car, where he physically assaulted the police officer and struggled over the officer's weapon. A shot was fired inside the police car, and Brown was eventually shot about 35 feet away from the vehicle. That is reported, and according to the St. Louis Police Department. So I've only got about a minute left here, though. Would you both not agree that there are reasons, certainly, for people to distrust what the police say? But as Kevin indicated as well, you do have to wonder exactly what happened still, and we still don't know the full answers as to what happened. There's been no investigation yet.
Well, there has not been an investigation, and it is necessary now for us to wait for those facts to come out. Kevin, I don't know if you've heard this, but I've gotten word off the street up there in St. Louis that the officer, the shooter, may have been black. If that's the case, this changes some of the paradigm, the dynamic of this as well. And so there we go.
CL, I predicted that he is black, because if he were white, it'd be a whole other element to the story. But they don't want to tell you that he's a black cop because that doesn't play into the narrative. So right now it's cop versus black people versus white cop and white people versus
When Trayvon Martin was first shot, I said that this could have been my son. Another way of saying that is Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago.
Well, President Obama surprised the press on Friday, walking into the White House briefing room and offering his first comment since George Zimmerman's acquittal. But instead of focusing on the verdict, he focused on race. Was that the right idea? Did it work? Let's bring in Kevin Jackson, author of The Big Black Lie. Kevin, thanks a lot for joining us on Fox and Friends. Did the president describe an America you recognize?
Not at all, Tucker. You know, black people in America should have about as much interest in Obama's comments on this as they would in reruns of Hee Haw. This is such a ridiculous notion of what he's trying to present. I was talking to the producers earlier, and I said anybody under 40 in America, a black kid in America, doesn't even recognize what Obama's talking about.
Now, you have 4 boys. Did you talk to them about the Zimmerman trial?
No, not at all. And the reason is, it would be like asking me, did I talk to them about the 40 or 50 or 70 people that were killed in Chicago, young black teens, since the verdict of Zimmerman. It's of no interest, not in the sense that I don't feel for the tragedies that have occurred, but we don't talk about that, you know, unless it just happens to come up. That trial was insignificant to us because it goes on. This is the type of thing that, quite frankly, happens in America. Zimmerman did had a tragedy occur. But other than that, it wasn't really a news story in our family.
Right. Now, if you read the press accounts today in the New York Times or Politico or any liberal outlet.
Listening to you earlier, harken this back to the 1950s. Race relations in America were technically better in the 1950s. Race relations in America were technically better in the 1950s. Certainly, blacks were experiencing better whole family units and all the things that you talked about statistically.
Not a YouTuber, just like making videos. And I tell you, this guy, Kevin Jackson. Now, I'm convinced that these bootlickers, these Uncle Bucks, these Chicken Georges, that they don't have rhythm like other black men. They can't dance like other black men. You know what I mean? They don't have they have a small penis. They don't measure up to the typical black man. They consider themselves inadequate. You know what I mean? So they go over to the other side. I'm like, seriously. I can't imagine this guy at a nightclub. You know what I mean? Dancing. You know what I mean? They can't communicate. You know, there's some black dudes out there that maybe for some reason they can't communicate with black people, with a typical black person. You know, and so they just hang around white people off default. And I guess that's fine. Or whatever. You know what I mean? That you don't identify with the black commonwealth. But don't try to freaking be a spokesman for the black commonwealth if you cannot identify with it. You know, and me watching this guy's videos on certain black issues, all I can say is that he deflected, he neglected, and he ejected. I first got light of Kevin Jackson when Obama was running for office. You know, when he was first elected into office or whatever. Kevin Jackson and a slew other of boot blacks, you know what I'm saying, emerged. You know, you've seen them on Glenn Beck or whatever, and they were just talking about the Democratic Party and how I'm not saying Obama isn't above criticism, but they had so much unnecessary angst against Barack. You know what I mean? Even before he was able to pick up a pen and sign any sort of legislator and so forth. You know, and I'm like, you know what I'm saying, when you think about it, I'm like, it makes absolutely no sense. And I'm convinced that a lot of the other ones, the YouTube guys here, you know what I'm saying, they want to be like this guy. You know what I mean? They kowtow after white people. No, they want to be this dude. They want to be brought on Fox News or whatever and talk about certain issues. Because it doesn't require much intelligence. You know what I'm saying? Only thing you have to do is think opposite of what the typical black person would think, or what people will assume the typical black person will think about certain issues and so forth. And I'm looking at this guy, I'm analyzing this guy, and I'm like, man, this guy cannot be this fucking dumb, which even makes it worse. You know, that this guy is he's a pure opportunist, you know, and so forth. Like when they ask him about, do you think black people identify with Obama? You know, when Obama when he made that speech about Trayvon Martin could be my son, Trayvon Martin, he could be Trayvon Martin when he was younger, meaning that he would be profiled even though he's light-skinned or whatnot. And then he said that black people won't, you know, the typical black person won't identify with that and so forth. A black person under the age of 40, I'm under 40, most black people recognize, no matter what level of education, fully comprehended Obama's words, you know, on that specific subject matter. You know, but the thing is, he's somebody who wants to reassure white America while taking a big fat shit on black America. You know what I'm saying? The dude looks like a gay-ass vampire. And when there's some sort of racial explosion here in America, he rises from his coffin. But here, he said some pretty outlandish things. When he said race relations were better in the 50s than they are now. I'm like, he's every Klansman's dreams. How in the fuck can he say race relations was better and, you know what I'm saying, during the nifty 50s or whatever? You know, let the good times roll. I'm like, the white man had his boot directly on the back of the black man's neck. There's no, I'm like, you had picnics, you had pick-a-niggers, you had public executions. You know, black people were being strung up on trees, and white people were sitting around, eating their potato chips, dipping them in sour cream or whatever. I don't know, were potato chips invented back then? You know, a black man did invent potato chips. But they were eating their salami sandwiches or whatever. They were cutting black people's nuts off. The word nigger was not considered a racist term. It wasn't considered an official word, and I've stated this in many videos, that you will pick up like literature, like, you know what I'm saying, the Hardy Boys mystery or whatever, and they'll have phrases like, there's a nigger in a haystack, there's a nigger in a wood pile, and I've stated what those terms mean, or whatever. And you know what I'm saying, you had you know what I'm saying, the black iconography cartoons, the dark iconography cartoons, you know, with the dudes with the black face, you know, Tom and Jerry, you know what I'm saying, when Tom get blown up, you know, he has the black face or whatever. You had the anti-mime, you know what I'm saying, you know, you see the black woman, and all you see is her big black hands with the pink palms or whatever. So how in the hell can this guy say race relation? And then, when did Emmett Till get assassinated? You know what I mean? Get executed? So yeah, and then the Emmett Till's murderer got off scotch-free. I'm like, during the Emmett Till trial, they took it, they were nonchalantly that they were actually serving beer at that trial or whatever. Race relations in this country was despicable. But then he tried to backpedal and he says the black family was so together in the 1950s. It's like they're sending out a signal to white people saying, yeah, when you was treating us like fourth-rate citizens, when you were treating us like animals, you know what I'm saying, we had our chops together, you know, and so forth. So don't, you know what I'm saying, so it's almost like, you know, Jim Crow was good for us, or whatever. I'm like, this guy, I'm like, he's just literally just reading from a book. Yeah, no, just like, you know what I'm saying, I don't know, man, like, they just written a book on how boot blacks should talk, you know, and so forth. And then, you know what I'm saying, and their alma mater, you know, these guys, is to blame blacks. No matter what incident happened in the media that, you know what I'm saying, that grabbed the public's eye, blame black people. It's a black person's fault, you know what I'm saying. Whites are never at fault. Since black people are just so disorientated, you know what I'm saying, since we're so rambunctious, since our community is in such moral decay, that whatever, you know what I'm saying, white America does to us is our own fault, you know what I mean? And then they deflect and talk about Chicago. Oh, Chicago, Chicago. Like Chicago is like this nucleus of black people. That black people are just somehow just even mentally connected to Chicago. That as long as people in Chicago don't have their shit together, black people in all 50 states, you know what I mean, are not going to get it together. We should all hold our head down in shame what goes on in Chicago, when Chicago was already been exposed of being one of the most corrupt places on the face of the earth. It has a corrupt police department. You know, I'm like, it suffers from hyper segregation. It's one of the, when I went to Chicago, you know, I tell you, I never seen a place so segregated. When I mentioned this, I had a girlfriend in Chicago who lived around the 187th block of Morgan. You know, those people should know what I'm talking about. Morgan Street, you know what I'm saying? She's near Hempstead, near the Grand, what do they call it? The Grand Motel, not too far from Stony Island. I didn't see any white people there, you know what I mean? The only other people I saw besides black people were the Arabs and the Pakistans, you know what I'm saying, Pakistanis working in bodegas, you know what I'm saying, behind bulletproof glass at gas stations and so forth. But, you know what I'm saying, they'll say that it's black people's fault, you know what I'm saying, why Chicago is so segregated and so forth. You know, it's always black people's fault, whatever. You know, and, you know, and then, but when going into the Michael Brown situation, and you've seen how this guy literally blamed Michael Brown, like, this is a disgusting individual. I'm like, dudes like this should have a silver bullet lodged in their cranium at 350 miles per hour. And I'm like, it's pretty apparent that the, you know what I'm saying, the black commonwealth, you know what I'm saying, will not claim this guy. So this guy has no druthers with black people, you know. But you know, see how he was talking about how Michael Brown was involved in drugs. I'm like, he didn't know that. These people would turn around and tell black people, well, wait, don't jump to conclusions. Let's get all the facts. Let's get all the facts, you know, before you make judgment. But then these guys will make their judgment, and usually it's against black people. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, he did not. I'm like, if he can make an assumption against Mike Brown, shouldn't I be able to make an assumption against the police officer? I can say that this is an incompetent public servant. Could I say that this police officer had a chip on his shoulder, that he was being rebellious? No, but it's okay. Now bear in mind, now he made these attacks on Michael Brown's character even before that the whole surveillance video of him inside that bodega or whatever, you know what I'm saying, emerged, you know what I'm saying, surfaced and so forth. So yeah, you know, I'm telling you, man, this guy is a but yeah, so you see how, and that's how it goes. You know what I mean? You assassinate the character of not just Mike Brown, but just assassinate the character of the whole black commonwealth. You know, you see how you're talking about, well, black areas are so bad or whatever. So therefore, but it's okay to mistreat black people any sort of way because their areas are all screwed up. But still, going by his logic, the black community will never get their self together. You know what I mean? If, you know what I'm saying, if you give the dominant society the green light to mistreat black people or whatever, to discriminate against black people, or to say, well, whatever you do is black people's fault. You know what I'm saying? How are black people are going to excel under these conditions and so forth? And that's what these guys are programmed to do. Now, we talk about slave mentality, and I think that this is true slave mentality. I don't think it's because of black people killing each other. That was implemented in us after slavery. Black people killing and destroying their neighborhoods and destruction of the black family. Slave mentality is the Stephen. Is the black man who wants to tuck the white man at night and tell him everything's it's okay. When the black populace gets riled up, you know what I'm saying, and ready to run amok and so forth, they calm them down and they just, you know, give them a finger waving or whatever, and say, look what you've done. You know what I'm saying? You got master angry and so forth. I'm like, look at this guy. I'm like, this guy. I'm like, he completely neglected from certain issues. You know what I'm saying? Was the police officer out of line and so forth? Is some of these police officers out of line? Does police brutality exist? Or whatever. But he was simply not acknowledging it or whatever. I'm like, this guy is lower than dirt. Yeah, I know. And I can say, this is who the David Carls and the Painless Residents, in some case the Tommy Sotomayor's, this is who they want to strive to be like. Because it's so easy to be them. Yeah, I know that, you know what I'm saying? They'll get some sort of platform on TV. All they have to do is go against the interests of the black commonwealth and so forth. Not identify with black people, but want to be the spokesperson of black people. How does that make any sense? Or whatever. And here's another thing that he says that was completely just mind-boggling and showed this guy's stupidity. When he says, well, when you think about the black community, you don't think of Beverly Hills. I'm like, psh. Alright, this guy had the audacity to compare the black community to Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills is sort of one of a kind. It's symbiotic with Hollywood or whatever. And when since Beverly Hills has been such a moral compass or whatever, Beverly Hills does not represent middle America. You know, I guarantee you will find more drugs in Beverly Hills than you would any black community, any community in America. And I'm like, what is Beverly Hills? Man, all it is a bunch of rich people that get plastic surgery to look 30 years younger and sniff cocaine all day. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty much it. I'm like, seriously? It would have been more clever to say that, well, when you think of the black community, you don't think of Mayberry, or you don't think of the farm towns in Indiana and so forth. That would have made more sense. But you know, then he goes and talks about places you don't walk at night or you're dangerous or whatever. First of all, every black, you know what I'm saying, so-called community, every black neighborhood always has a busy strip. You know what I'm saying? A strip where there's fast food areas and there's gas stations, and people nonchalantly go to well-lit areas and gas stations or whatever and so forth. But white people looking for drugs, looking for prostitutes, have no problem journeying in the depths and the dark crevices of the so-called black community. You know what I mean? That's a fact. But people, you know what I'm saying, they go to the well-lit, you know what I'm saying, go through a McDonald's drive-through, Church's Chicken, or a gas station with ease and so forth. And when you're dealing with any metropolitan area, you know what I mean, any city, any major city, even where predominantly where the white people live at, because they always live in the nucleus of these cities, in the high-rises and the lofts and the condos. Still, those areas, nobody even likes walking in those areas at night. Any metro city, people are always cautious at walking at nighttime and so forth. And here, and we know that we have sundown towns. There's places like Viger, Texas. You know what I'm saying? Places like Jasper, Texas. Places like Martinsville, Indiana, where a black man should not be caught at walking at night, or even the daytime for that matter. So therefore, yeah, and the main job of these guys is to simply ignore racism by white people and white supremacy and so forth. You know what I mean? Notice how this guy did not talk about police brutality, almost as it's non-existent. And if there is, it's the black man's fault for some reason and so forth. This is true slave mentality or whatever. It's sickening. And I said this before. No other race or culture of people in the world, in human history, have so many turncoats than black America. You know what I mean? And slavery, these people are an offspring of slavery. No, the ghetto ass so-called nigger running around in the black community, he's not a product of slavery. No, these guys are. But, you know what I mean, that's all I want to say for this. Thanks for watching, and Sally forth.